Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds. I'm just going to download a couple flyers, and then we're going to get ready to start our program. Or maybe I'll start it now since you're all so quiet. All right. Get my microphone closer. Well, thank you all for attending our Hope, Resiliency, and Recovery Summit this morning. I just want to share a couple of logistics. So right outside this door, down the hall past the umbrella, my language is like really off lately, the elevator, the restrooms are there. That's okay. The other day I was calling the refrigerator the TV on top of the, TV. So hope that's not a sign of anything. Anyway, restrooms are down the hall past the elevator. We have breakfast snacks over here, some lovely quiches and muffins and coffee. Coffee's from Union Coffee, so it's really good. And I just want to say, as a public health person, we do encourage people to wear masks, but it's optional. So for those of you that may not know me, my name is Monica Gallant, and I'm the director of the Community Action for Safe Teens Coalition, which is a committee of the Boys and Girls Club of Souhegan Valley. And I'm the director of prevention services, at the club, and the director of the CAST Coalition. So we have our mission statement for CAST. We have 3 points. We have to prevent substance misuse among youth in Souhegan Valley, to promote healthy choices and emotional wellness among youth, and to educate, support, and strengthen families. And so we have a wonderful coalition, and at this time I'd like to ask all of our coalition members to stand up to be recognized. Yeah. Thank you. So it doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? We do a lot of work, provide a lot of resources, and really want to serve the Souhegan Valley community. So CAST became a drug-free communities coalition in 2018, and what that means is that we received a federal grant to build capacity in the Souhegan Valley and address mental health and substance misuse. So for the past 2 years, we've been doing a lot of work around the issue of adverse childhood experiences and working really hard as a community to become trauma-informed and trauma-responsive. So today, we're talking about suicide prevention and how we as a community can come together to collaborate more to protect our youth. And suicide is the second leading cause of death in New Hampshire for ages 10 to 34, and New Hampshire is 35% higher than the rest of the country on that issue. So I wanted to just kind of share, some of you, I don't know if you wonder or not, but I'm wearing a t-shirt today, and I don't usually wear t-shirts when we have presentations, but I was thinking a couple of weeks ago about what to wear. Should I buy something new? Should I wear something fall or summer? And I thought, you know what? I have the perfect thing. I have my t-shirt that was created by our youth, and it was for our Hope Fest 2021, which the topic was mental health matters. So mental health really matters to our kids. They want to talk about it, they want us to talk about it, they want us to let them talk about it. So it's really important that we start talking more about emotional wellness and how to get there. The more we do, the more people will feel validated and heard. So it's our responsibility to listen to our youth and empower them to break the stigma. We know that's a huge factor. To break the stigma around mental health and encourage them, the kids, and our community members, to access the tools available to them to either help themselves or their friends. So before we get started with our program, we do have a couple of letters from some of our federal representatives. We have a letter from Senator Maggie Hassan that I've asked our coalition coordinator, Shana Karlstrand, to read. So here's Shana reading on behalf of Maggie Hassan, Senator Maggie Hassan.
Thank you all so much for being here today. Dear friends, I regret that I cannot be with you today, but I applaud you for holding the Community Action for Safe Teens Summit and working to ensure that adolescents throughout the Granite State have access to mental health resources. I'm glad to see the Community Action for Safe Teens Summit focuses on youth mental health and suicide prevention. These issues have always been of grave concern, and the COVID-19 pandemic has further underscored the importance of addressing the stigma around mental health and ensuring that young people can get the support that they need. I also appreciate Community Action for Safe Teens' commitment to addressing the substance misuse epidemic. Throughout New Hampshire, families and communities continue to grapple with the devastating effects of the substance use disorder crisis. Far too often, this crisis impacts young people in our state, hurting their development and long-term health. It is up to all of us to work together to combat the substance misuse crisis. I'm not a speaker, obviously. The efforts of the Boys and Girls Club of Souhegan Valley, along with their community partners, exemplifies the all-hands-on-deck spirit of the Granite State, where we roll up our sleeves and work together to better our communities. Today's summit, designed to connect youth with mental health and suicide prevention resources, is vital toward this goal. Our efforts to reduce the number of suicides and suicide attempts must be a collaborative one and a responsibility that we all share. Thank you to the Boys and Girls Club of Souhegan Valley and to all of the community partners here today for your important work to support the adolescents of the Granite State. With every good wish, Maggie Hassan.
Thanks, Shana. So now I will ask our coalition chairperson, Porter Dodge, to read a letter from Senator Jean Shaheen.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. A very important summit that we have. Dear friends, I wish I could be with you all in person for the Hope, Resiliency, and Recovery Summit. Please know that I join you in spirit as we come together to raise awareness of youth mental health and brainstorm ways to provide support, education, and advocacy in a time of great need. Thank you to everyone here today for your contributions to this worthwhile effort. In the past 18 months, young people in New Hampshire and across the country have coped with enormous grief, stress, anxiety, and trauma from the devastating fallout of COVID-19. This stems from a variety of factors, including loss of loved ones, separation from friends and community members, disruptions in their education, and other difficult situations. We must provide outlets of support that guide youth and help them build the resilience they need to rebound from these difficult experiences. Today's summit is a great opportunity to expand on the many accomplishments of CAST and chart a path toward that strengthens the Souhegan Valley community. I'm eager to see how your I Care Souhegan Valley campaign will bring people together and improve emotional wellness among youth and families. This is vital work. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for your caring and compassionate approach to youth mental health. Thank you for being a part of the solution to an issue that presented even more complications in just the past year and a half. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Jean Shaheen, United States Senator.
Thank you, Porter. Okay, so we have two amazing speakers today who have tremendous experience in the behavioral health field. Before I introduce them, I just want to give you a quick overview about how the morning is going to be structured. So we'll hear our speakers, then we're going to take a very quick break. Whoops. Oh no, what did I do? Lovely. We're going to take a very quick break just to allow people to get situated in their areas. And then we're going to get into small groups. So you see 6 clusters here of chairs. And we're going to ask everybody to get into a cluster. And then you will be presented with resources by 2 or 3 speakers in that cluster. And then it will take place for 7 to 8 minutes, and then the speakers will move to the next group. So you will be able to hear all of the speakers this morning, and you have a bag full of resources that include things from the speakers as well as more. So please refer to those resources later. There's lots of programming that's happening for youth and families in the Souhegan Valley and Greater Nashua Public Health Region that are available to us. So we want you all to know about them and to share them. Okay, so our first speaker will be Ann Douglas, And Anne is a community educator and prevention specialist at NAMI, New Hampshire. She has worked with NAMI for the past 9 years, offering trainings in suicide prevention and postvention to a variety of audiences, including college campuses, military installations, tribal nations, and communities. Anne brings over 20 years of experience in substance abuse prevention and treatment to NAMI's Connect program. Anne's professional work experience includes teaching at high school and college levels, inpatient and outpatient counseling for substance use disorders, youth prevention community work at the statewide level. Anne is also a cultural competence trainer by the Anti-Defamation League. She embraces and promotes cultural sensitivity to issues of gender, race, ethnicity, language, religion, disability, and sexual orientation/identity. Anne is a foster parent who also teaches classes to other foster adoptive parents. Her work in suicide prevention honors the students and friends she has known who have died by suicide. And I want to say, as Anne comes up to the podium, that she has been a tremendous asset to our coalition and our youth. We collaborate a lot. She's done some NAMI Connect training with our youth and some of our staff members so that we're better able or better equipped to support the students and youth that we serve. So Anne, if you can come on up, I will see if I can, thank you, put our, and I also want to say that Anne is also going to be speaking on behalf of the Suicide Prevention Council. We were supposed to have someone there this morning, but there's been an issue that they are unable to attend. So Anne is also going to speak on behalf of the New Hampshire Suicide Prevention Council.
Thank you.
Oh, you know what?
Thank you, Monica. I am all set. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much for having me present today. Thank you. A special shout out to our tech person up there in the loft, Andy from Milford Town Hall. Shayna, you did a fantastic job reading that letter. I just want to say that I love inspiring quotes. And here's a good quote to start out our time together today. It's by John Adams. To do good and be good is all you have to do. And really, that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about doing and being good for the well-being of our youth and young adults all across, not just our state, all across our country. And today's work is really thanks to a young adult who is connected with CAST, who really wanted to have this conversation in a more open and frank and honest manner with adults. And Monica's spot on. When Monica says that these youth, they're looking to us to come to the table to have a discussion about mental health, to have a discussion about suicide risk, and to be validating and to be reassuring in that initiative. What I will say is, as challenging as the pandemic has been, what I see as the silver lining is that never before have people talked so openly about mental health issues. And I really hope that at this point in my professional career, I really hope we don't lose that. I've worked for over 15 years here, K through 12 in Sauhegan Valley, so I feel like I'm coming home again today. And the social emotional learning, SEL initiatives that are part of our schools now all across our country, even though on my side of the things I call that mental health, that's a great thing. And we need to keep that going moving forward. So I want to recognize that young adult who brought us all together in a spirit of collaboration and communication. On Monday, I was doing a high school youth leader training at a southern school here in New Hampshire. My golly Moses, those kids, grades 9 through 12, 30 of them, they talked for over an hour about mental health, about the need to validate and to reassure what they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And what I think our charge is, as professionals in the Sauhegan Valley, I think our charge is to get this message out to their parents and guardians, because they spoke heartbreakingly about their parents and guardians who did not know how to hear them, did not know how to respond. So I just want to leave you with that charge. We've got to get this message out to the parents and guardians to have this conversation, because this conversation of mental health can then lead to conversations of suicide risk, which can then lead to saving lives. But we've got to be at the table having these conversations. So I represent NAMI. Hold on, I gotta get my slideshow here. Yikes. Monica, you may have to, this is a sensitive baby. Okay, so put me on that first slide. Thank you.
1 second, I think I might need to go back to sharing.
Technology,
Yeah.
don't you love it?
How do I get up there?
Yeah, you just need to get in the
I know, I
slideshow.
need to do the share screen option.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. There we go.
Look at you. Yeah, but,
Yep.
okay, and then,
Okay,
then you're gonna go to the
and then-
slideshow.
Do we need?
I need the slideshow.
Yep.
Good, 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 thank you. And then from current, or beginning, yep.
Okay, I
Gosh,
have the
and then I
volume on
can,
there.
and where's your arrow? Right there, okay. So, I do work for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I've worked there for 15 years. And just like CAST, on a statewide level, we support, we educate, and we advocate in all things related to mental health, suicide risk, and suicide loss. So check it out, NAMINH.org. The mission of NAMI New Hampshire is all about no person whatsoever dealing with their own mental health or suicide risk or that of a loved one needs to feel alone. And so that's what we're talking about today, is connectedness. So I have a real treat for you. This is a video clip that I came up.
I'm just going to make sure we have the volume.
Okay. This is a video clip that I came across about 6 months ago, and it's from the Children's Hospital of Colorado. I love it, love it, love it. And it gives me hope, it makes me feel good, and it really is the direction we need to go, not just as Sauhegan Valley or as the state of New Hampshire, but as the larger society. So check it out.
You know that feeling where your thoughts scare you or make life tough? Sometimes it feels like no one else in the world has those thoughts or feelings. No one seems to know how difficult it is to deal with your feelings. And it's not easy to share your deepest secrets. You might think something is wrong with you. Or you might worry what other people think. And all of that makes your thoughts and feelings worse. Our culture has created this environment of shame. Until the 1960s, society sent people away if they had challenges managing their thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Over time, we learned that we didn't have to be afraid. We learned how to help people get better. We became hopeful. But there are remnants of those images in our culture today, which is why some people still feel uncomfortable talking about it. The stigma has taken new forms too. With more access to more people all the time, it can seem like the world is telling us it's not okay to be anything but perfect. The truth is, everyone has thoughts or feelings that can be hard to deal with. So why do we make it so difficult on ourselves by judging others who could be going through the same challenges we are? What if, instead of seeing labels, we saw people who are struggling and could be there for them so they didn't feel so alone? What if we looked past our fear of mental health and started to talk about it in a constructive way? What if, as a society, we used empowering words and healthy images to help people feel supported? Maybe then more of us could feel comfortable telling others when we're having a hard time. Maybe more people would get the help they need. And maybe one day we won't have to talk separately about mental health and physical health, but just health. The truth is, each of us has the power to change our culture. Will you join us? Share this video with a kid, your neighbor, a friend, and help us break the stigma of mental health.
I love that. I love that video. So, check it out and share it around. Oh, sugar baby. Okay, so when we can have that open conversation about mental health, anything bad or unsettling that happens in the larger community, then we can also have those conversations as well. So if we as adults are at the tables having these discussions as parents and guardians and as professionals, if we're having these conversations with youth about mental health and well-being, then if something bad or adverse happens, we're at that same table to validate and reassure around grief and loss. But you see, we can't get to that table of grief and loss until we're able to feel comfortable with the language of feelings and the language of mental health. I do want to say, because I always try to be accurate, we have had an unprecedented rise in anxiety and depression in young and older all across the country. But what I am here to tell you is we have not yet seen an increase in suicide attempts or suicide deaths across the country. And part of that is because people at risk for suicide during this whole COVID felt less isolated in terms of more people experiencing what they were feeling and experiencing. And that's the conversation we need to continue as we come out from under this other public health issue of COVID-19. And so that increase in anxiety and depression, we believe that people can gain resilience. We believe that people can connect to help before it becomes an issue of suicide risk or suicide loss. So we choose hope, I choose hope, and I encourage you to choose hope as well. Anytime we're connected around these issues of mental health and suicide prevention, keep in mind the resources. Keep in mind key stakeholders that come together to be part of the larger safety net in keeping our youth and young adults safe and well, but also all members of the larger community. So here's a bunch of resources nationally and LGBTQ resources as well. Okay, so did I say everything I wanted to say? Yes, I think that's it. So do you want me to go right into Jennifer? Okay, so Jennifer Sabin, who's a dear colleague of mine, she's a longtime public health advocate, and she is the first statewide suicide prevention council coordinator here in New Hampshire. And she hails from the public health sector. So she couldn't be here today. She sends her regrets, but she wanted to talk about the I Care New Hampshire campaign, which is really cool because this campaign, to my knowledge, it's a statewide campaign, but Monica and her youth, on behalf of CAST, has kind of created a local, vibrant version of this campaign. So this is a statewide mental health and wellness initiative of the Department of Health and Human Services, and the overarching goal is to create a culture of caring and connectedness. That's why we're here today. And it really is about seeking help and having hope for people to be able to have that social support and connectedness to prevent suicide and substance misuse and other risky behaviors. So one of the things that this campaign is based in, it's based in good research. It's based in the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention, which guides all of our 50 states in suicide prevention best practices. And also, it's about the coalition embracing this and actually adding images of local youth. And DHHS could not be more proud of this partnership. The I Care New Hampshire messages encourage talking and help seeking long before a crisis. And it can also reach vulnerable individuals that might be at risk for suicide and get them help before it becomes an issue of suicide. So that's Jennifer. And do you want to? I didn't know if you wanted to point this out.
Yes, sure. I will speak to this. This is we have a couple of flyers. We have some on the table. We also have some in your resource folder. So these are our kids. These are our club kids at Community Connections, which were events that we held over the summer over at Keys Field, just to be increased connectedness in the community. And we can make these publications available to you to post. So this is part of the I Care messaging. We want you all to have them in your hands, and we want them posted all over the community so that people are getting that message. It's a visual that, you know, people are going to be encouraged to start talking about, you know, emotions and mental health and seeking help and connecting to resources. So we have two different pictures. Let's see. Well, the other one is in your folder. We'll share it too. So I do want to introduce Dr. Allison Roy. I met Allison. I had the pleasure of meeting Allison earlier this year. She did a program or training for us at the club, and Dr. Allison Roy is the Vice President of the Center of Trauma. Oh, geez, this thing is so sensitive. I'm going to stop sharing right now anyway, because we'll get Allison's PowerPoint up here, or Dr. Roy's PowerPoint. So Dr. Roy is the Vice President for the Trauma Responsive Practice Change. She works with Dr. Cassie Yackley, which some of you may be familiar with. Dr. Yackley's been working in the region for a number of years doing trauma-informed and trauma-responsive programming with our schools and communities. Dr. Roy has worked with children, adolescents, adults, and families across 3 different countries around issues of traumatic stress, anxiety, and depression, family stressors, behavioral challenges, and emerging adulthood. Since returning to the United States, Dr. Roy spent more than 2 years as a psychologist for a partial hospitalization intensive outpatient program for adolescents, focusing on crisis stabilization as well as family and group therapy. Dr. Roy additionally has advanced training in dialectical behavior therapy for adolescents. She provides training in schools, first responders, medical and mental health professionals, and trauma-responsive systems of care. So my hope is that some of you will take Dr. Roy's information and bring her back to your school or agency for some trauma-informed and trauma-responsive training, just so that we can really increase our collaboration and language around trauma in the community. So feel free to take advantage of all of these resources that we have for you today. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Roy. So, let me just pull this up. Is this one? Yeah, I will be. The switching back and forth. Yeah. Okay, we got some. And then that. There. Or.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. I was so excited to be able to work with you all and work with Monica again and be able to help deliver this message that's so incredibly important right now in this time of need. And so, you know, what Ian and what we've all been saying this morning is that we need to increase this conversation. And I recognize I'm a parent of 3, right? I have 3 young kids myself. And I talk trauma all day long, right? I'm the trauma lady. I get booked as the trauma lady. It's still hard to have these hard conversations. It's hard. And a lot of caregivers that I work with don't know how to start. So hopefully today, my hope is that what I'm going to give you today is the ability to have some of the science behind. I'm the trauma lady, but I'm a super science nerd. I love the neuroscience behind what's going on, and I think what that gives us is that validation and that understanding that I'm not crazy, I'm not feeling this way because I'm weak or I'm not good enough. I'm feeling this way because my brain and my stress response system is responding in a very normal way. So hopefully I'm going to normalize and validate right off today some of the experiences you all might be having, or some of the kiddos or teenagers or adolescents or young adults that you all work with might be having. And then we're going to look at how to have that conversation, how to build hope, and how there is also a science to hope and rewiring our brains to move forward after this incredible year and a half that we've all been through. So let's start here. Let's start with this global crisis that we've just been through, and this pandemic and all the other parts that came along with it, right? It wasn't just the health and safety. It was the financial crisis. It was the social and political unrest. And the reason I say that is because all of those factors, all that information you're taking in every day from the news, from social media, from interacting with your neighbors and friends, that causes our stress response system to activate in a way that it's never been activated before, right? We've been really lucky to be able to leave our houses most days, if not every day, not having to question whether or not we're going to be safe, going to the grocery store, interacting with family and friends. And all of a sudden in March 2020, that was something we had to at least navigate or question. And our children are no different, right? They're having to question and navigate constantly as well. And what that does is it activates what we call the stress response system, a system that exists for very good reasons, right? It exists to help keep us alive. But it's when it's being activated day in and day out, it leaves us feeling certain ways. So we're going to take a look at that today. Maybe. Yes. It's hard getting used to someone else's computer. So let's look at this really quick. And I promise the science piece, I'll break it down. And I'm going to hang out here for the morning. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. So this is our survival mode, right? Most of us are familiar with some of this language at least. That fight, flight, or freeze mode. This, again, is a system that we want to kick in if, for example, we're being chased by a bear. I always use this as my universally scary situation because I feel like that would be terrifying to everyone. So if you're being chased by a bear, you want this system to automatically kick in. What it is we have a structure in our brains called the amygdala. Super, super tiny little structure in our brains. It's our smoke alarm. What it does is it scans our environment constantly. It's scanning my environment constantly right now to make sure that there's nothing upsetting or worrying or dangerous at all in our environment. So if a spider all of a sudden started crawling across the floor towards me, my amygdala would probably activate in some way. I would try to ignore it, but it would definitely be activating. So that's what it does. It activates to try to make sure that our arousal level is appropriate to what we're experiencing in the room. If the amygdala detects anything new, upsetting, worrying, for example, having to wear a mask, that was something back in 2020 that was new. That was something our brain had to navigate. It aroused our amygdala just a little bit, just enough. When the amygdala gets kind of tipped off, it starts this cascade of actions and reactions throughout the brain that causes certain things to happen. It causes the fight, flight, or freeze mode to happen. But importantly, it activates that brainstem area for action. It says, all right, this person's in some sort of new or dangerous or upsetting situation. We better operate the brainstem area, right, our reptilian brain, try to keep us alive. So just focus on breathing, heart rate, respiration, digestion, all those things that we need to keep us alive. Therefore, so much neuronal activity and blood flows going to that brainstem area, it cuts off access to our frontal lobe. Our frontal lobe is where we imagine, where we have impulse control, where we have empathy, where we learn how to take turns and respond to other humans in our surroundings. Our frontal lobe's not fully developed until we're about 25. So all of these youth that we're talking about this morning, they don't have that fully developed anyways. And then if they're anxious or they're worried or they're upset, they're not going to be able to access that thinking part of their brain. This is why what Anne was talking about, this SEL curriculum, this social emotional curriculum in schools, is so darn important this year. We have to get these kids calm so that they're able to open up their whole part of their brain. I've seen the brain scans. I've seen the neuronal activity stop to the frontal lobe. It's fascinating. It's validating, and it's something that we definitely need to attend to this year. So that's what's actually happening when we talk about fight, flight, or freeze. So let's break it down just a little bit more, because we don't always go fight, flight, or freeze. Our body automatically responds, and you've probably felt this, at least in small amounts, what it feels like to freeze, what it feels like to have a hyperarousal response. So let's look at this a little bit and look at the real life symptoms that it causes for our kiddos and ourselves as well. Some of us need to hear this for ourselves today as well. So if we're calm, meaning our amygdala is not activated at all, we are in that middle section you see up there, that optimal zone of arousal. We call it rest and digest for a very good reason. All of our body systems are completely at rest, meaning, I'm hoping most of us are there right now, meaning our heart rate, our respiration, everything's pretty even keeled, even our digestion. So I just heard, actually this was probably about a month ago now, on NPR, a really interesting story about how pediatricians and PCPs are prescribing indigestion medication, heartburn, upset medication at alarming rates. Not surprising, because that's one of the first systems that's going to get activated by stress. So if we're at rest and digest, everything's operating the way we would expect it to, hope it to, want it to. As soon as our amygdala detects something in our environment, we get shot into one of the other two zones, either hyperarousal, that's at the top. I'm doing a lot of this gesture. I'm used to being on Zoom, right? I'm gonna have to break these habits. I'm totally Zoom presenting right now. Hyperarousal at the top, or hypoarousal at the bottom. So we'll start with hyperarousal at the top. That's fight or flight. That's when the body speeds everything up in order to deal with whatever is scary or overwhelming in your environment through either running away or fighting it off. And so what happens is, and you've felt this, if you've kind of come around a corner and someone scares you quickly, right? Your heart rate goes through the roof, your breathing might get rapid and shallow, even if it's just for a minute. That's the beginning of a hyperarousal event. So adrenaline gets released, cortisol gets released, and so we can do superhuman things like lift a car off a baby. This is when this happens, right? People can do superhuman feats when they're in hyperarousal because they have to survive. It's not helpful. So helpful if you actually do need to lift a car off a baby. Not helpful if this is you're a student who's sitting in math class trying to learn. So that's hyperarousal. Hypoarousal is freeze mode. This is when our body slows everything down, kind of shuts down, starts shutting down systems, and we kind of fold into ourselves. So think about an ostrich or possum mode, because animals do these too, right? These are very kind of in nature, these events happen in nature as well. Which, by the way, if you're being chased by a bear, this is the mode you hope your body goes into, right? You're just supposed to curl into a ball and hope for the best. That's hypoarousal. So we all, as humans, have this ability to go either way. And our body often naturally picks for us based on what the amygdala is taking in as information. Super helpful, again, if we're surviving. Not so helpful if we're trying to be an educator in a classroom, an employee, a student, a parent, frankly, right? All of this will interfere with our ability to function. And it leaves us with a lot of these real-life symptoms. So this is what hyper and hypoarousal look like in real life and look like for many of our teenagers. And you're going to see how this has a massive overlap with anxiety and depression, probably feeding into some of those levels that Ian was talking about earlier, those higher levels that we're seeing. So these are some of the things that are what I like to say is completely normal reactions to a completely abnormal year that we've all had, right? These are normal body. This is what I would expect us to be doing as a human race right now. I would expect to see higher levels of these symptoms because of what we've all been through. So again, this is validating because we need this information to get to the next part is talking about, okay, how do we move forward, right? So let's just look at a couple of these. You're probably going to nod your head and understand or validate that you've seen these in yourself or others around you. Hyperarousal, that fight or flight mode, the first things we're going to see are irritability. I don't know about you all, but my 7-year-old, super irritable during the pandemic. 7-year-olds aren't irritable usually. She was really irritable, all the way to anger. So we as adults tend to show the anger. when we're really anxious or uncomfortable. We might see crying. We might see temper tantrums well into young adulthood. I'm seeing, and actually I had an administrator in one of the school districts I work with say, I was doing this presentation, and say, I'm having adult temper tantrums. Yep, those two. We as adults just have better frontal lobe, right? We have better impulse control because ours are hopefully fully developed. And so we have better control over these symptoms. Kiddos don't have that filter. They don't have that net often, and especially when they're stressed. So these symptoms are going to come out bigger. They're going to come out stronger. We might see verbal or physical aggression for those school people that I have in here. These are those kiddos that punch lockers, that slam doors, that might have big events in the classroom, right, because they're feeling like they're in fight, flight, or freeze mode. They might run away. You might see physical agitation. I'm seeing a lot of kids that I work with right now not be able to kind of keep their body calm, right? They're agitated, they're fidgety, they're having adrenaline and cortisol in their veins. That's not good for us. It doesn't feel good. That chemicals, we have to get those out somehow. And so they come out in these ways. And then you're gonna see self-harm on either side. Self-harm is something that is unfortunately incredibly effective at regulating our stress response system. So again, makes complete sense that we would see an uptick in that right now. Hypoarousal on the other side, this is really shutdown mode. This is going to look a lot like depression. You're going to see kiddos or teenagers especially not want to engage, not want to, and I know some level of that is completely normal, not want to get out of bed, not want to go to school or see their friends, or want to default to seeing their friends virtually, right? We're going to have to relearn some of those social skills and social avenues. So this is what we might be seeing. Again, all completely normal, all something that we know how to fix, that we know how to make better. That's the good news. All right, last slide of what I feel like is the heavy stuff, right, before we move on to the hope. This is a kind of a concept from Dr. Bruce Perry. If you're looking for further information about the neuroscience of stress especially, he's brilliant. He's written several books. He has a great website. But he has this concept of how states become traits. And this is really pertinent for right now because we've spent 18 months in this state, the state of kind of questioning, of uncertainty. Uncertainty is actually one of the worst stressors for our bodies because we don't know how to problem solve around it. So uncertainty, stress, we've spent 18 months here. That state has now become our baseline. And that's okay. We just know that. We know moving forward, it's likely going to take us upwards of 18 months to get back to that calm baseline. So just to kind of think about giving yourself and those youth that you work with that grace around, it's going to take a little bit to heal because our state has become our trait. All right, this is my favorite slide right now in this current time because it shows this beautiful duality of this word vulnerability. And really, I personally think that this shows the two sides of the pandemic and where we're at in this pandemic right now really, really nicely. So when I say that word vulnerable, some of us might think of endangered or exposed or liable, being open to, having that open wound, right? And that's where a lot of us are right now. We have this open wound of this past, of this 18 months of what we've been through and how it impacts us. And vulnerability has this other side, this other definition of being this birthplace of empathy and hope and recovery and resilience and courage and accountability. And I love this word, authenticity. And I really do think that this where we are right now has afforded us this ability to move forward in a way that maybe we didn't have before, to move forward in a way that is truly authentic. Because why not? We've been through a lot, guys. Why not move forward in exactly the way we want to? Like Ian was saying, why don't we take this opportunity of these open conversations beginning to happen and move forward with that as the norm? Why not? So I just love this concept of vulnerability and offering us this two sides of kind of where we are right now. So how do we move forward? How do we move forward in that vulnerable way? Because vulnerability affords us this ability to learn and grow. And in fact, we're going to get to at the end of my talk today this concept of post-traumatic growth and how we know that to exist and how we know that to be something that can happen in human brains. So here's Dr. Bruce Perry again, and this is coming from him, and this has been when I work with school districts this year, This has been the mantra that I hope they adopt. Regulate, then relate, then reason. And that's going to be kind of the mantra moving forward. We have to regulate ourselves. We have to do things like self-care, like validation, like understanding our symptoms and where they're coming from to make them less scary, helping our teenagers understand their symptoms. They love this brain stuff, guys. I work with them. I work almost solely with adolescents. They love learning why they feel the way they do. It helps to make it less scary. So regulating that through connected relationships. We're going to look very briefly at relationships today and how powerful they are, and why I'm so happy to have so many different community members in this room, because each one of you could be a relationship with a child that helps them to regulate. So regulate through relationships, connected relationships, and then we can have that thinking brain back online. We can have learners. We can have kids that want to go and learn and do academics when they feel regulated in relationships. So let's talk about relationships for a minute, because what relationships offer us is a fourth F. Sometimes I get giggles when that happens, but there's a fourth F, and it's not the one you're thinking about. But fight, flight, freeze, or flock. And what that means is it gives our brain that option. If you have that safe, secure relationship in your life, many of us, I hope, in this room have that and can immediately, when I say that, think of that person. It means that when you start to go into hyper or hypoarousal, your brain goes, wait, but there's another option. I can flock to that person, my person, and they're going to make me feel regulated and bring my brain back down into that optimal zone of arousal that we talked about. So you can be that relationship for a child. What that means is, so when we're little, we create what we call secure bases with our primary caregivers. The best kind of visual I can give of this is a mother duck with her ducklings. You've seen this probably. If you haven't, Google mother ducks and ducklings, because you'll get it really quickly. So the mother duck has her ducklings, right? And they're out in the world, and the ducklings start to stray away from the mother duck until something scares them, right? Or alarms them, or it doesn't take much for little ducklings, right? And they go back to their mother up under her wing. That's the secure base. That's what you all can provide for children in this community. Because some of us get it from primary caregivers. Some kids don't. In fact, 50% of children enter primary school with not having that experience, with not having the experience of having a secure base. So of course, we're going to see these fight, flight, or freeze reactions in school. They've never had the option to flock. They don't know how to do that yet. That's why educators and attachment-based education is so important, because educators can provide that. School lunch personnel can provide that. Bus drivers, police officers, firefighters, mental health professionals, parents of other children, principals. You can all provide that secure base experience for a child. And then as adolescents, they start using each other as secure bases, which is both wonderful and really hard, because they don't make the best decisions as a flock all the time. But it's good practice, right? Because then as adults, that's who we use. We use our colleagues, we use our friends, we use our spouses or partners as our secure bases. So this is how we regulate, right? We regulate. We're herd animals. We're not meant to regulate on our own. So this is how we regulate with relationships. Okay, last slide about healthy and healing relationships. And I love this slide. For those of you who know my partner, Dr. Yackley, she's not one, and she would fully say this out loud, she's not one to be short. She can talk for days. She can, because she's brilliant. And so when she made this slide, I was like, Cassie, this is an amazing slide, because it sums up what was 10 slides into one slide. Nice work. So what this does is give us a quick kind of snapshot of this process of attachment, attunement, and co-regulation. So attachment is a child being able to say to you, right, this secure base that you've become, you keep me safe, and therefore you help me to believe that other people can be safe too. And that's so important, because so many children, if they haven't had that experience prior to primary school, they don't know what it's like, and the world's a pretty scary place, right? Think about if you didn't have any safe humans in your world, that'd be pretty overwhelming. So to be able to have that one person and then be able to start to say, okay, I trust and love that one person. Now I'm going to start to generalize to other humans in my world and create this net, right? We're talking about this safety net today. So that's attachment, attunement. You see me, you understand me, and you help me to understand myself. That's what kids need. They need that mirror. They need to learn about nonverbals, about empathy, about all those relationship building skills through attunement, which we do through these awesome little neurons in our brain called mirror neurons. I'm not going to get into those today, but again, if you look those up, they're really cool. And they are what allow us humans to talk to each other without using language at all. So when we're attached to another human, we begin to resonate with them using those mirror neurons. And this last piece is the piece that's incredibly important right now in our world, is this process of co-regulation. You notice when I'm upset or I'm distressed, and you help me to calm down. This is what children need right now. I've heard time and time again, children are so resilient, and they are. Children are incredibly resilient. Part of that, a large part of that, is due to their neuroplasticity. Their little brains are able to grow and rewire very easily, but they can't do it on their own. So kids are incredibly resilient if they have resilient adults in their life to help them navigate growing that resilience. And that leads us to this concept, is post-traumatic growth. Now, post-traumatic growth is something that we know has existed prior to COVID-19, but it's certainly a concept that people are kind of researching, looking into, and it gives us hope in this current time. Meaning that we know that brains are actually, due to that vulnerability, right, that word vulnerability again, are actually more open to growth and change, developing deeper and stronger relationships, finding a kind of solid grounding in community, believing in something that's bigger than ourselves. All of that is even more possible after we've experienced hardship. So we're at this point right now, and the first question I often get are we really post-trauma? We're not. We're still in it. We're still in it in some way. And it doesn't mean that we can push forward with growth. It doesn't mean we can't do that. We can do that. We can still push forward with this concept of post-traumatic growth, even though we're not fully out of it. So we're going to look at, just very quickly, a couple ways to do that. I'm not going to get into all of this today, but I found this article to be incredibly helpful. This comes out of the Harvard Business Review. I would be willing to bet if you Googled Harvard Business Review and post-traumatic growth that this article would come right up. This has been what I've been working on with schools this fall, is kind of how do we foster, create, encourage post-traumatic growth this school year. And what's really exciting is for school systems in particular, a lot of what is recommended is already built in to a lot of what we're doing. So I think many of us ask this question, what good could come of this? What good could come of this global pandemic? And what good can come of it is this resilience. And we're going to get to what resilience actually is in a moment, but it's resilience built through this concept of post-traumatic growth, or growth after trauma, through these 5 concepts of education, educating ourselves about our new world, what is possible. This pandemic challenged a lot of what we thought was possible. We thought we were safe. We thought it wouldn't come here. Not me, not my loved ones, not here. And so it challenged that. We just have to educate ourselves about what now we know to be true. Doing that might cause some intense emotions. So doing emotional regulation practices are so important. Regulating, there's that word again, right? Regulating ourselves. And then this next part, these next 2 go together. It's all about what Anne started us off so nicely saying, it's talking about it. It's creating that narrative. It's sitting down with children and saying, boy, this time's weird, isn't it? Or gosh, this has been hard. Talking about it, allowing open space. You don't have to be a therapist. In fact, I'm glad you're all not therapists, because then we wouldn't have work anymore. Actually, probably still will, because there's such a demand. But every relationship can be therapeutic. Every single relationship can be therapeutic if you allow the time and space for a child to be able to express what they're going through and tolerate that distress. That's the biggest part. That's actually my biggest tip for you as caregivers or people that work with youth. is being able to demonstrate to them that they're bringing hard stuff to the table, and it doesn't mean you're going to walk away. It doesn't mean that you're scared or overwhelmed, that you're going to regulate yourself as an adult to be able to sit and tolerate what they're bringing to the table. That's all you need to do. Because then they can see, their brain sees, right, that you're a regulated adult that's going to help walk them through this adversity. Oh, Mr. Rogers, I can't really, I just love him. He's so great. And he was so trauma-informed before his time. He didn't even know it. So this really kind of sums up what I was just saying. Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that's mentionable can be made more manageable. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary. And the people that we trust with those conversations help us to know that we're not alone. So there it is. We just have to be able to talk about hard things. It's not easy. We're not programmed to do it as humans. It doesn't feel good, right? We don't like tolerating those difficult conversations. And yet it's the most powerful thing you can do for someone that's struggling. So resilience, and how do we move forward? So factors that build resilience, and you can see that we've already been talking about these this morning. Supportive relationships is in bold and number one for a reason. That's the absolute number one way to promote resilience in our youth, is having those supportive relationships. We have to stop bubble wrapping kids. This is what we're seeing now. We have to be able, and we do it for the very best reasons. It's very hard to see children suffer. It's very hard to tolerate children suffering as adults. So we want to take away that pain when actually we need to let them feel what it feels like to have those hard emotions. Pain, anger, sadness, disappointment, frustration, and be able to actually say, I'm here for you, let's move through this together, because then they come out on the other side and say, wow, that was awful, that was hard, and I did it. And now my neurons in my brain are firing and wiring like crazy, and the next time isn't going to be as hard. I'm going to know how to get through it the next time. And I'm going to come out on the other side more. That's what resilience is, actually. That's actually what resilience is leaning into adversity and rewiring those neurons again and again and saying, I can do things. I can do hard things. Now I can do harder things. And I'm going to come out on the other side stronger. This is, actually, this quote has a little bit of a history for myself personally. So like I mentioned, I have 3 children of my own, and my oldest was a kindergartner in March of 2020. And so her principal actually sent this quote to us at the kind of cusp of the pandemic happening. And I immediately wrote back and said, that's a wonderful quote, can I steal it? Because what I like about it is hope is one of those words that I think we use a lot, and it becomes kind of nebulous. We're not really sure what it means or what it is. And so I felt like this really gave that kind of concrete way of describing what hope really is. Hope isn't a feeling. It's a behavioral process. It's a habit of mind, right? We have to really kind of force those neurons, those hope, those resilience neurons to fire in our brains. We can't just have that feeling. We have to practice it. It's a habit. Born from overcoming adversity, the confidence that we have something or some influence over our own future. That's really what hope is being able to see that future for ourselves, see beyond today. Hope doesn't exist without struggle, and struggle, of course, needs hope to not become suffering. So we have to lean into both the hope and the struggle. I just want to add another layer to this of working with adolescents for so many years, understanding that oftentimes they don't have that hope. They don't know how to do that yet, how to see the future, right? They live in a little bit of a shortened time frame. For those of you who work with adolescents or have one of your own, everything is the worst or the best right now, right? That's naturally, developmentally where they're at. So it's really powerful to be able to say to someone that's in that place or to an adolescent, I'm going to hold that hope for you. I get that you can't have that right now, that's a concept that you don't have right now, but guess what? I love you enough, I care about you enough, I'm invested in this relationship enough to hold that hope until you can hold it yourself. We're just going to end today with this parable, this concept. This concept actually came up on a Brene Brown podcast. For those of you who don't know Brene Brown, she's also a lovely, amazing individual who's just really encouraging to listen to. And she was speaking about this being a good way of describing this pandemic and how we're going to heal from this pandemic. And I just thought this was so lovely. I wanted to share it with you all today. So this parable describes someone who has had a near-death experience and has seen what's on the other side. And the first room he goes to, he sees this beautiful banquet hall, filled with this banquet table, all these beautiful roasts and vegetables and desserts and wine. And everyone sitting around that banquet table looks miserable. They're all starving to death. And the reason that's happening is they've all been handed these long spoons to eat with, so they can't feed themselves. They have no access to that food. So he goes to the next room, the other side. He sees the same banquet room, same table, same spread, same amazing smells, and everyone in there is happy and talking and laughing, well-fed. They have rosy cheeks. They have the same long spoons, but they figured out how to feed each other. And that's how we're going to come out of this. We've all been through it, right? So we're all carrying around these stories. We're all needing a little bit of someone to lean on, of something to lean into. So if we're all looking for that, but no one's giving it back, we're all going to be starving. So we have to use our long-handled spoons to feed each other, to feed our youth, to be able to figure out how we're going to get through this together as a flock, as a herd. So thank you all. Thank you for having me.
Okay, before we close it up, I just have a couple of closing comments to make. I wanted to share a couple of, first of all, I want to thank all of our resources that shared today. So if we could give everybody a big round of applause. Very much appreciated. And hopefully you all learned something and you're taking something that you can bring back to someone you know. So I just wanted to share a couple of upcoming events. So most of you heard me say we have the Parent Cafe on Tuesday night. This is an open invitation to all parents. The theme is Nurturing the Seeds to Grow Strong Families. You have these flyers in your packets, so feel free to share them. But people do need to register to get the link. It's on Zoom. And for participants, they have an opportunity to win a $25 Visa card. So just a little incentive there. And it's fun, I think. Then we have, tomorrow night, actually, if anybody's interested in a suicide prevention Zoom, virtual training, Anne is actually leading it, and I think Anne left, but she's doing a suicide prevention training tomorrow night. There are some flyers over here on the table, and that is, again, Zoom registration required. I do have a flyer here, too, so you can either grab a flyer, take a picture of it, whatever you need. But if you're like, you want to do this right away, go ahead and register for that. We will also be coordinating something in this region, hope to be live in the near future. And then the Pumpkin Fest, we have a mental health booth that's going to be manned by our local representatives, I believe, and Sauhegan Valley Outreach Team, and possibly some cast members on October 9th, and they will be at Emerson Park. And the whole idea behind that is to talk about it, to get people talking about it. So, that's another opportunity to have the conversation. And then, of course, I can't let you go without inviting you all to our next CAST Coalition meeting, which is on October 13th. And those are still being held through Zoom right now. And you can contact us if you'd like to receive that Zoom link. And we're happy to include you. And we are really happy that you are here today. We're here for you. We want to be a resource. We want you to take advantage of the resources that we have to offer. We receive this funding, and we don't want to keep it all to ourselves. We want to share opportunities with our youth and our schools and our law enforcement and our, faith communities, all of our community partners. So please take advantage of that. And we hope that you've been inspired today to join the efforts in increasing awareness around mental health and suicide prevention. So thank you all for coming. Grab a snack on the way out. If you want to hang around and chat, we do have some time here, so you're more than welcome to hang around if you want, but if you want to go, you're free to go. Thank you. Thank you.